and welcome to Jiu-Jitsu Red to Blue. I'm Tish Durkin, and today I am thrilled to welcome as my guest Representative from the state of Tennessee, Gloria Johnson, who achieved nationwide fame as one of the Tennessee Three when in the wake of the horrific Covenant school shooting in Nashville, which resulted in the deaths of 6 people, 3 of them young children. Representative Johnson and 2 of her colleagues, who just by total coincidence happened to be 2 young African-American males, so 2 African-American men and a woman, white woman, go and support a protest of lots of angry moms in the crowd at the legislature, and they were there's a long story that you should Google, but the 2 guys were actually expelled. Thankfully, they've been returned by their constituents, and Representative Johnson almost got expelled. But my favorite part of that story is that millions of dollars then poured into the Democrats of Tennessee, and hopefully on the strength of that, Representative Johnson is now challenging Republican Marsha Blackburn for the United States Senate. So welcome, Representative Johnson.
Thank you so much, Tish, for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Now, as we've talked about before, I like to hone in on a specific issue, at least for starters, because the whole point of the podcast, which a lot of people think is martial arts, but it's not, Jiu-Jitsu, it's crushing MAGA under the weight of its own arguments. So we're measuring them by their own metrics and trying to talk to the listener or viewer who is the person who says, oh, I don't like Trump and Trumpism, but I really am worried about crime, or I'm really worried about, the economy, or this and that. And their record on that is really quite abysmal. And to me, there really is no more gut-wrenching example of that than the issue of the opioid epidemic, which, if you listen to Republicans, is entirely the fault of Democrats, because we've invited all these migrants bearing tons and tons of fentanyl across the border, and this is what's decimating communities, open and shut case. But of course, as you well know, and I well know, no one better exemplifies hypocrisy on that issue than your opponent, Senator Marsha Blackburn. So I wonder if you would care to expand on that topic for starters.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no question she's in the pocket of Big Pharma. She's one of the top receivers of those dollars from Big Pharma. You can see that her donations don't come from Tennesseans. I think 40% of her money, possibly her donations, come from Tennessee. The rest come from outside of Tennessee. More than 70% of my donations come from Tennessee. And it tells you who she's working for. I'm working for Tennesseans. And along those lines, Tennessee is a state, one of the handful of states who have not expanded Medicaid. And Marsha Blackburn has voted to repeal the ACA multiple times. Not only does she not want expanded Medicaid, but she wants to go back to the time where people with a pre-existing condition, which is most of us, can't get access to insurance, and so therefore can't get access to affordable care.
And of course, that has a huge effect on the ability to get treatment if you are in the throes of an opioid addiction.
Exactly. And so one of the things that we saw, there were so many studies done across the country on states that expanded Medicaid. Every single one of them positive, every single state having better medical outcomes than Tennessee. And what we saw in Ohio with those who were able to get expanded Medicaid, they were able to treat 96% of those with opiate addiction. Tennessee treats about 13%. Imagine the difference we could make.
And I think now you're about number 3 in deaths by overdose. Is that
yes?
Is that right?
We are near the top. And Marsha passed a bill that allowed it to be easier for those drugs to be on the streets. She prevented the DEA from doing their job with a bill that she passed. Then she went on 60 Minutes and said, oh, that's an unintended consequence of my bill. If the DEA comes on and they say, oh, excuse me, but we told you this was going to happen and you did it anyway.
Right. And she, and
not on it.
And what you're referring to is the Ensuring Patient Access and Effective Drug Enforcement Act of 2016, which she worked on as a member of the House of Representatives. And very surprisingly, it didn't really hurt her in her 2018 quest to replace Bob Corker in the Senate. But what's kind of amazing about that, there are two things about it that are really amazing. One is, it certainly expanded patient access, but it really didn't do anything for drug enforcement, because what it did was remove a provision or defang a provision in the 1970 Controlled Substances Act, under which drug companies had to report any large or somehow suspicious orders to the government on pain of serious fines or losing their licenses. And just as the opioid crisis was going from, a crisis to an apocalypse, Marsha Blackburn, who's from, as you point out, one of the absolute centers of this crisis, decides to get behind this. And in fairness, incredibly, there were plenty of Democratic co-sponsors, and it passed with, in overwhelming bipartisan fashion, and President Obama did sign it. But what I think is amazing in her race against you is that instead of saying, gee, we've all made this mess, here are my ideas for combat, for cleaning it up, she's just, without blinking an eye, participating in this idea that, I have nothing to do with this problem. The Democrats created it.
Yeah, it's completely outrageous, especially in a state that refuses to expand Medicaid. They put Band-Aids. Oh, we gave $3 million to this county for their addiction problem. That's 8 beds. 8 beds where we need 10 times that. It is ridiculous. I lost a very dear cousin from this epidemic because he had returned from the military. He was in that section of military folks who don't have coverage, insurance coverage, and Medicaid expansion would allow them to have coverage. When he came back, he got a job working construction. He hurt his back. In order to be able to keep working, he self-medicated because he could not see a physician to have it treated and monitored. And he got addicted to opiates. And he's not here.
Yeah.
At times he once had an overdose and ended up in the hospital. And he would go through those hard times where he'd want to go to rehab, but it's a 3-month wait.
Right.
And if you ask an addict to wait 3 months, you don't know what shape they're going to be in 3 months from now.
Yeah.
And he's not with us anymore. And I 100% attribute that to our lack of expanding Medicaid and providing the care that folks need so that they go to the streets to try to relieve their pain.
That's absolutely devastating. Now, moving to another sort of theater of this debate, the southern border. To hear Republicans, including Senator Blackburn, say it, the whole reason that opioids have flooded our communities, or especially communities in places like Tennessee, is that Democrats are just ushering in all these undocumented migrants. But as I'm sure 90% of the opioids apprehended are apprehended at legal ports of entry, and the people attempting to smuggle them are U.S. citizens. So on this issue, Republicans, that still leaves 10%, which is a lot. But who are you going to vote for? The people who are constantly harping on 10% of the problem, or the people who are harping on 90% of the problem? I mean,
absolutely. And it's so dishonest and disingenuous to act as if this is the only way it's coming, and to post, they apprehended this much fentanyl at the border. How horrible. And it's like, they're doing their job. They are catching a lot of this.
Yeah. And also
the job, but then you guys vote against putting more money to stop more of it from coming through, because you need this problem to run on.
The one thing I really enjoy is when they go, oh my God, look at how much fentanyl has been caught. And then you're like, wait a minute, I thought we were just letting him in. I mean, I mean, didn't they get the memo that we want them all to come in and vote Democrat?
And they apparently don't understand caught is good.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
We stopped it at the border.
Yeah. So, but it's so funny that if you say something really forcefully and repeatedly, it inures to your benefit. I mean, the fact that they've gotten away with these so-called arguments for so long really cracks me up. But another aspect of the border that I think people may hear less about is just how much of the firepower with which the Mexican drug cartels protect and promote themselves comes from the United States. Right. And thanks to our very lax gun control apparatus. And I was just reading, actually this morning I pulled out, it's pretty easy. It's very easy to find any of this stuff on the internet, but there was a cartel that was getting thousands of weapons from basically a factory in Wisconsin. And it says the cartel exploited permissive federal and state level gun control rules to buy some of the most powerful weapons available to American civilians. So juxtapose that with President Trump and Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley and God knows who else advocating or at least entertaining the idea of sending the U.S. military onto Mexican soil without the consent of the Mexican government to attack the Mexican drug cartels. Why don't we just take a few steps to make it less easy for the Mexican drug cartels to get a hold of all these weapons?
Absolutely. There's so many things that we can do, still honoring the Second Amendment, but putting protections in place for our citizens and citizens, across the border. The reality is our proliferation of guns everywhere is what's hurting our communities. And you can have a gun to protect your family and your home, and you can have guns to hunt. No one's trying to take those away. I've been hearing for 30 years, somebody's going to take my gun away. I am a gun owner. I will always have my gun. But you know what? I store it safely. No one else can get access to it. And if I was in a position where I was dangerous to either myself or others, I hope there would be a red flag law in place so that gun could be removed until I was no longer in a crisis. I mean, that's what red flag laws do. They remove guns from people who are a danger to themselves or others temporarily. And they will do nothing to protect our citizens and our children in their classrooms.
Now, one thing that I'll just admit that I cannot wrap my mind around, I am a Northeastern female cliche. A handgun comes out on Law and Order, I basically throw up. I don't want to know where my state came from, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not the person to evaluate outdoor culture in the South. But it does seem to be true that in the past, there was more stringent gun control in places like Tennessee.
Absolutely. Since the supermajority took power in 2010, since then, that's when all of our gun laws have been relaxed. We had a permitting system that worked great. Yep. You would take an 8-hour course, do some shooting training, and you could get a carry permit. They've done away with the permit. First, they went to a 2-hour online class with no shooting practice. And then they went to none. Anybody 18 can carry if they please, with absolutely no training, no test, no assurance that they know what they're doing with a weapon. Then we passed a bill about it's fine to have guns in your cars. And so what we've seen is so much of the guns that are getting out there to people that shouldn't have them come from car theft, stealing guns from cars. And, if you've got your gun laying on the front seat and your car door open, there should be a penalty for that, for allowing your gun to be stolen. If you want to have your gun in your car, have it locked so that no one can see it or get it. Yes. But it is remarkable to me that people don't understand. Even in Alabama, they have a safe storage law. I've tried for 3 years to pass one, and Tennessee just absolutely refuses.
But how come? Now I know the police in Nashville have spoken out a lot about how much crime has been affected by that. How many burglaries there have, how many guns have been stolen, and we even did an episode on that because it's like something like 40,000 guns a year are stolen just from cars,
and that's up from like 5,000.
Yeah, and police department after police department, including in Nashville, will do these public service announcements saying, "Hey, gee, please, could you lock up your guns or whatever." And then, but these people who claim to be pro police push back against that. Like, I can't figure that out.
They claim to be pro police, but all law enforcement was against that open carry, anybody can carry bill. They totally ignored law enforcement when they passed that bill. So we back the blue is when they feel like it. They use that phrase very much like they use the Bible or the Constitution. They pick the parts that they like. And so several of the gun bills that they did to loosen our laws or basically get rid of them, law enforcement was adamantly opposed to, and they completely ignored them.
And did they pay now? But is law enforcement still bad? Like, law enforcement still seems to be backing Republicans nationally. I mean, do you?
They still do pretty much.
Yeah.
I don't understand it because they're creating more crime. My colleagues across the aisle talk a lot about incarcerating people and all of that, which we do the crime, do the time. I firmly believe. However, we're doing zero to prevent crime. When we know Medicaid expansion drops violent crime rates by 20 to 30% after expanding Medicaid, when it drops drug crime from 20% to more than 30%.
That's really fascinating.
Yes.
Is there any hypothesis as to why that is?
Well, it's because people aren't desperate. They're not sick. And, if you can't access a doctor, you may not be able to work, and you have to do what you have to do to get by. And so, look at the studies in Michigan that found that when they expanded Medicaid, it lifted people into another income bracket. For the first time in their lives, because they had access to health insurance, they were able to get a loan. And most people, or a lot of people, use that loan to get a car. They could get a better job off the bus line. And Michigan said just improved their economy so much, it's lifting people into the middle class. Every Republican policy in Tennessee, by not expanding Medicaid, by refusing to raise the wage, we're using a $7.25 minimum wage. Another study shows that when you raise the wage, the crime from juvenile to 29 years old, crime is reduced greatly when the wage is raised. So all the things that we can do to lift people up, to help them become successful, to make our economy better, they're fighting against. Medicaid expansion, raising the wage. They kill those bills every time. I bring them, they kill them.
And do you have any sense now, since the Tennessee 3 became such a big phenom, and also since Kamala Harris got onto the ticket, I mean, do you have any sense that anything is is that changing at all? Because it was so shocking in 2018 that the former governor of Tennessee, who was very moderate and very popular and had Taylor Swift behind him and this, that, and the other thing, and he got beat like a drum by Senator Blackburn.
I wish people could see what's happening on the ground in Tennessee. It's amazing. And, pundits in D.C. and people across the country don't understand what's happening on the ground and what it means. And I've always been a grassroots person. I listen to regular people. That's who I spend my time with. Retired school teacher, never made a lot of money in my life, but I love what I've done. I love teaching more than anything. I love being in the legislature and working to help make people's lives better. And so that's the people I know are regular folks. And so I'm going on a 95 county tour. I'm going to every county in Tennessee. And the fascinating thing. And I didn't even notice at first, but we were talking with a group in Hardeman County, and this one farmer said, my farm is out on the highway. And he said, 4 years ago, along my highway, almost every single farm had a Trump sign out in front. All down the highway, that's all you saw. He said, this year, there's not one Trump sign. And so we started looking and watching. There's not. We drove through 3 rural counties one day and saw 2 Trump signs. It's greatly reduced. And I talk to people now, I ask them all the time about their county. I'm like, they're like, come to think of it, there aren't that many. And then I asked my friend in Virginia, he lives in rural Virginia. He said, yeah, there aren't hardly nearly what there were 4 years ago. And even on my mom's road in her rural county, they were all down her road. I was driving to her house a few weeks ago and I didn't see one. And some of them stayed up 2 years after the election, after 2020. So this is meaningful. And then we had a Vanderbilt poll. And in the Vanderbilt poll in December of 2023, they polled Trump Biden, and Trump was at 50. I would think he'd be at 60 plus in Tennessee. So then just a few weeks ago, they polled again, right before he was convicted of the felonies, and he was at 47.
Oh, wow.
So I think something's happening, and we had 50 Republicans at my kickoff. That's never happened.
You had 50 Republicans at your kickoff?
Yes.
Were these Republican, they weren't officials, or were they just
no.
Republicans? They're just people.
I always ask, Republican people,
right,
not happy with Marsha Blackburn or the Tennessee supermajority.
Right.
Because here's the situation that people really don't understand. Now, 80% of Tennesseans, urban, rural, and suburban, believe in abortion care at some level. They, even MAGA Republicans believe we should have the exceptions of life of the mother and rape and incest, which we don't have in Tennessee. We only have an exception for ectopic and moleward pregnancies and dead fetuses, which obviously never will become a full pregnancy. And other life of the mother issues, you have to be very close to death before you can get the help that you need. And then at that point, the doctor may be in risk for making that, decision. So 80% of Tennesseans, even some MAGA Republicans, agree with us on this. This is all parties. And then, of course, 80% of all of those same groups, all parties, believe in gun sense legislation in Tennessee now. More than 70% believe in Medicaid expansion. 81% believe in medical cannabis, and 60% believe in recreational cannabis. They overwhelmingly support our public schools. But the Republicans in the state, including Marsha Blackburn, are against all of those things. They're against most of their Republican voters. They call me extreme. I bring paid family leave, which 81% of Tennesseans support. I bring child care infrastructure, which all Tennesseans support. I bring Medicaid expansion. I bring cannabis reform bills or co-sponsor them. I bring public education bills, making sure we're fully funding public ed. And I'm in line with the majority of Tennesseans of all parties. They are the extremists.
So you feel optimistic?
Absolutely. We know that we have a path. In 2018, first, demographics in Tennessee have changed. But in 2018, Marsha won by 200,000 votes. We know that there are 300,000 Democratic voters in Tennessee who haven't voted the last few cycles. They feel like their vote doesn't matter. They feel like they keep voting and nothing changes for them. And those are the voters. We're talking to those voters in addition to everyone else. But these folks are going to come out this year. And when these 300,000 folks come out and vote, we are going to win this U.S. Senate seat. And we're also going to flip down ballot state House and state Senate seats. And we're going to surprise the nation because we are not a red state. We're a non-voting state. We are 50th or 51st in voter turnout in the last few cycles. And we're going to change that.
And do you think that the switch from President Biden to Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket do you feel any energy from that?
There is a lot of renewed energy. We had a great energy before, though. I felt Biden was going to win.
Mm-hmm.
That most people that are not on the ground talking to regular folks.
Right.
Get out there and talk to people in your community.
Right.
And those folks are not thinking what people think. And maybe with some of the polls, maybe they're calling and they're saying, yeah, I'm gonna vote for Trump. But they're second guessing themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
When I think of what does it mean that there are no signs out there? I think there's three pools of voters. And I think there are those that are ashamed to put a sign out, but they'll pull an R anyway. Ashamed to put a sign out and they're going to stay home, or they're going to vote for the other girl or guy. So I think it's going to be different than people expect. And we are super positive and hopeful because I've never seen this state electrified like it is. And yes, it's been more in the last week or so. And the way the musicians have come out to openly support my campaign and others, they're performing at my fundraising events. Had one, Denisha, perform last night. It was so great, but the energy it's visible. And I wish people around the country knew, and I wish people understood that you can flip a state like Tennessee with only 5 media markets, very cheap media markets. $20 million would flip this state, and we can do it.
Now, speaking of money, where do people send money? What's your...
VoteGloriaJohnson.com is my website. You can donate there. It will also tell you where to send a check if you prefer to send a check. So, love to have your help and support through donations, through volunteering, any of those things. We have got a movement happening in Tennessee. When we went to the well, and after the horrible tragedy of the Covenant shooting, what I can say is myself and Rep. Pearson and Rep. Jones, one of the things when those crowds of thousands showed up every day, students, parents, grandparents, people from East Tennessee, West Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, it gave us so much hope. Those people, they sang together, they chanted together, they ordered pizza and all had lunch together and talked to each other about the issues that concern them. And we created, or they created, this multiracial, multi-generational, multi-partisan coalition that is going to roll into November, and they're going to hang together and they're going to vote for their communities and the safety of their communities. And they're going to vote for unity and equality and healthcare and all of these things because they're fed up with the overreach. So there is so much excitement in Tennessee. And I was so proud of Tennessee last Saturday for being the first state to turn unanimously their delegates from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris.
Yes, quite amazing. That whole thing has been amazing. I mean, that I never, the possibility of Donald Trump losing big to a black woman was not on my bingo card, but I am enjoying it. Now, before we go, I want just a little bit of a leap here, but you very poignantly spoke in the legislature about your own experience with needing abortion care because you live with something called Marfan syndrome, which means that you cannot safely carry a child to term.
Correct.
And of course, in light of that, actually, quickly, I just wanted to ask you, you had mentioned before that the extremely low number of delivery rooms and so on still available in Tennessee. What were those statistics again? So
1/3 of Tennessee, or 1/3 plus, has no OBGYN, and somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 has no delivery room.
And do you have any sense of how much of that is? I know that there were pre-existing issues on that front, but has that? Do you have any data to the sense that that's accelerated since Dobbs?
Oh, we know it's accelerated because since Dobbs, we've had 21% fewer OBGYNs come here for their residency. Because you can't, as an OBGYN, you can't do your full residency in Tennessee. You'll have to double up with another state where you can get all the practice that's needed to certify you as an OBGYN. So here we are with a shortage across the state. And now with Dobbs, fewer and fewer are coming here for their residency. And what we know about residencies is more than 50% of residents stay in the state where they did their residency. So think of the future years where we're going to be seeing less and less and less OBGYN staying here. Not to mention the ones that have already left Tennessee. I know 3 that have left personally.
Yeah.
And this is going to create a dangerous situation for women and girls in Tennessee. You know, we also, because we have expanded Medicaid, you could be an hour and a half or an hour away from a hospital. So imagine a 10-year-old carrying a pregnancy. They're 2 times more likely to die in a pregnancy than an adult woman. And we have one of the highest rates of maternal mortality in the country. So you're putting that child at risk. Not only are you taking away their childhood by forcing them to carry a pregnancy, but you are putting their life at risk.
I just caused a little bit of a detour then, because what I wanted to get to was, given that you cannot give birth, I just was wondering if you had any thoughts at all on Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance's assertion that as the mother of 2, I should have approximately 3 times the voting rights that you have as someone who does not have children.
Bless his heart. It's really, really all I can say. You know, I taught special ed for 27 years, and I was able to spend more time than usual with my students and with their families in the evening, trying to help them with various things, helping them fill out papers. One mom that I had MS, and she didn't know how to fill out the paperwork to get disability. You know, because I didn't have kids, I was able to help a lot of other people. And we shouldn't have to explain our reason for not, but there's a medical reason. I cannot. Mm-hmm. And so it's just ridiculous that clearly he just hates women. He also says they should stay with their abusers. But having children is a choice. And I love it when people choose to have them. And I certainly love and respect those who don't.
That's right. There you go.
And I do have a cat.
Yes. And you don't have any shame about that. You're proud of your cat.
I'm proud of my cat. I'm proud to say he said that we're all miserable cat ladies, and I'm probably one of the happiest people that folks know. So he's wrong on all counts. It just shows how wrong and how hateful a person he is.
Yes. Well, poor JD. I think I wonder, well, this week has got to be driving Trump crazy, because his vice presidential candidate is getting such
and I don't think he understands he can't do anything about it, because there's already been a vote. I
know. Well, I wonder, either way it would be bad.
Yeah.
Like if he doesn't pick him now, if he got rid of him now, that would be a problem.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't get rid of him, it's a more fun problem.
Yeah.
So who knows? All right. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you. Any other issue, any issue blurb, anything you'd like to throw out there before you go?
Just, everybody needs to go to the polls. You've got to think about democracy. It's on the line. And women's reproductive health is on the line. I just fear for the vulnerable communities in our country, and certainly in my state, with these folks at the helm, because we need elected leaders who, at the very least, as an elected leader, you should respect the human dignity of everyone you represent. And these folks do not respect the human dignity of women, of Black and brown communities, of the LGBTQ community, of the disabled, and of senior citizens. So think about that when you go vote.
Well, what about the rich white guys?
I think they're all right. These
have you no heart?
One of my Appalachian friends on TikTok has gone a little bit viral today, because she said she was tired of mediocre white guys with no socks. But she did a great little thing on that and DEI. So,
oh God,
but they're going to be fine. They're the only ones who are going to be fine if we do the wrong thing in this election.
Right.
So,
right.
Think about your neighbors, your friends, your family. Do what's right for this country and vote for our democratic norms and our democracy.
Representative, soon to be Senator Gloria Johnson, from your lips to God's ears, and everybody send some money.
Thank you.
Tune in for more of Jiu-Jitsu Red to Blue. New episodes drop just as soon as I can make them.